Welcome to the Trauma Survivorhood podcast. I'm your host, Sarah Miley, an IFS-informed certified trauma recovery coach. This show features interviews from survivors all over the world as they share their impactful story of thriving in their post-traumatic growth. We explore resources, tools, and coping skills to support the trauma survivor community. Enjoy. Welcome back to the Trauma Survivorhood podcast. I'm your host, Sarah Miley. I'm an IFS-informed trauma recovery coach, and I have with us today Katie Kuperman. Katie, thanks for joining us. She is a copywriter, an entrepreneur, wife, and mother of two. Her life has been rich with many experiences, including competitive sport, travel, and academic. She is a woman who gives it her all. She works hard and experiences the world wholeheartedly. She has also been an anti-bullying advocate for as long as she can remember. The heartbreaking story of Amanda Todd, who was a teenager of cyberbullying victim. She took her life at 15 years old. When Katie heard that story, it brought up so many deep emotions for her that she wrote a book about it called The Only Way Out. And as she wrote it, her story deepened in subject matter to include also mental health struggles, facing fears, overcoming unfathomable hardships. She then created a companion workbook called Many Ways Up, which takes the emotion and that increased awareness and the key messaging from the novel and sets those elements into real life action steps. She also enjoys quality family time, as well as forest walks, meaningful conversations, and a good, strong espresso. Same. Welcome to the show, Katie. Thank you so much. Before we dive into all this, the anti-bullying and the cyberbullying, and of course, this story with Amanda Todd, tell us a little bit more about your journey, how you have just come to this place where this was so important that you wrote a novel about this.
Yes, thank you so much for having me on. I'm truly honored to be here. And my story, it's interesting because I feel as though through my business and striking content, I was always working with so many clients to help them bring their stories to life for many years, 15 to be exact now. So I think, somewhere along the way, maybe 5-7 years ago, it became clear to me that I loved helping people bring their stories to life in so many different ways, even from a short blog post all the way through to a larger book, published book. So it really became clear to me that, yes, I enjoyed that, but I also wanted to bring my own story to life. And it was interesting because for the longest time, I absolutely had no idea what I wanted to write about. That is until I was at the gym. I'll never forget that day. I was just on the elliptical and I somehow came across Amanda Todd's story. And for those of you that know that story, you'll know about the infamous YouTube video where she's there and there's no words. There's words, but there's no words. There's no spoken words. She has everything written on these flashcards and she's just taking you through her entire story on flashcards. And it brought me to tears. I knew right in that moment that I needed to write a story about anti-bullying. And I didn't yet know that it was going to go into the realms of mental health. It really took me and I really enjoyed that journey. I remember that so vividly of just writing freely and writing this story and seeing where it was going to take me. And it is a fictional story, so it's not Amanda Todd's story, but it was definitely her who inspired me to write that book. And as I went through, that's where it really started to go into these other depths of, well, if something tragic were to happen when it came to bullying, cyberbullying, secrecy, what would that look like? And how would that person cope? And likely in many of these cases, even if we don't admit it right away, or even if we don't know right away, there are mental health components there that we need to address. And so I did go into those depths. And I won't take it any further right now in terms of spoiling the story any further, but it's very much a journey of what happens and bullying coming into play and then dealing with mental health and all the aftermath of that. And then how do we pull out of it? How do we create something good out of something bad?
Yeah, that's a beautiful place. We will land there. First, can you just tell us a little bit more? Obviously, the impact was so great that you ended up writing this novel about this, but what were those emotions like for you when you're watching it and you're unconnected to Amanda Todd. She's not related to you. She just is someone that you did not know about until you were watching this on the news at the gym. What were you feeling?
I think in those particular moments, in many moments in my life, I am someone that feels such empathy in these types of situations.
Mm.
And I even remember, you know, as a child, I was fairly fortunate. There was a little bit of bullying around me, but there was nothing super traumatic or over the top that I can recall. But there were definite instances where I might go through a little something of that, and I had a thick skin on me, so I was always able to respond in some way to brush it off and to make it look like I didn't care when I did. I think that's a very good thing for us to try to teach our kids of today too, as hard as that sounds, but just that thicker skin and letting them always know that it's not about what they say to you, it's about how you process it and react to it.
Yeah.
And if you can even make it look like in that moment that you could brush something off and they're not bothering you, that's your strength. That's your bubble. That's your protection.
Wow.
And throughout my life, I had these kinds of little moments that I can remember. I also remember larger moments where friends of mine were struggling, and I would always try to step up and step in and make some kind of comment and defend them and tell, you know, a certain group that that was not acceptable, that they couldn't do that. Try to be the tough one, I guess you could say.
Yeah.
But in all those moments, I always remember I am a person who is deeply moved by other people's experiences. I really feel that. I have that empathy within me. And I think just now I'm a mom too. You've been a mom now for about a decade. So I think that that hits home more as well. You know, you see stories like this of young kids suffering in some way, such as the way that Amanda Todd did. It's unfathomable. It's so heartbreaking to know that this beautiful life is being subjected to all these horrible things and can't find a way out. Cannot. That was her whole message on this video, was just, I feel alone. I need help.
Yeah.
And it just got me. It got me, and I wanted to try to make my own difference in my own small way.
That's really beautiful. Yeah, I love that. Step in and step up. That's great. What great advice for people who might be seeing this happen. Beyond that, when you started writing the book, you probably learned a lot more about cyberbullying. So what are the depths of the cyberbullying? What did you take away as you started to do research and kind of get involved in writing your book?
Right. Great question. Cyberbullying has really gotten worse. It's become a lot more prevalent, particularly in the last decade or so. When Amanda Todd was struggling, there were no laws around this for the protection of our kids. I'm happy to say there are laws now. There are bills in place that, for example, on social media, they can take down offensive pictures immediately, don't need to ask permission, don't need to do this or that. All these things are positive steps in the right direction. But the reality is we were all given these powerful devices, these smartphones, and adults didn't even know what to do with this power, what to do with this level of connection. And then we put those devices into the hands of our youth and we say, here you go, figure it out. And unfortunately, that's not good enough. They don't know what to do just as much as we don't know what to do. We still don't know how to fully manage this. There's all these things online about, oh, I'm addicted to Instagram. I'm addicted to TikTok. I need to come off of this. I need to manage my time online. I need to recognize my own behaviors that are not serving me. These are adults dealing with these kinds of emotions and feelings and recognizing that this may not be good for us on such a level. And then we put it into the hands of our youth. And our youth, all of a sudden, unfortunately, if they're on, I would say, the bad side of it, then it becomes this shield, right? And they don't need to bully someone in person anymore. They don't need to walk up to someone and have the courage to say something offensive to their face. They can just type it out or use their fingers on their phone. That's the scary part. And I think they feel this sense of power behind that. But I'm also a strong believer that, you know, all my messaging throughout all of this, I'm also a believer that we can't just blame the bully either. That means they are going through something. They're dealing with something awful in their life. They need to come open, speak up about that, have someone step in for them so that they can overcome that and then not feel the need to do those kinds of things behind the shelter of a device or in person. But my research has showed me that cyberbullying is very prevalent. I can't say in my research, I found that it's taking another downturn now. I don't think so yet. It's only going up. And another reason why I want to get this book into the hands of parents, teachers, youth, teens, preteens, because they are going through this and they're seeing it around them. And if we can raise that awareness and also make people feel this emotion, right? I feel that, all of us as human beings on this earth, we first are driven by our emotions. Then we can take actions because of those emotions. Yeah. So if we can make our readers feel something through a powerful story, then perhaps they'll remember the story, be driven to take maybe a more positive action, even if it's slightly in the right direction next time, and then slowly start to make these incremental changes all around us. Yeah. So I think cyberbullying has a ways to go. I think we are on the right path, according to my research, in terms of laws coming into play, any kind of governments recognizing the fact that this is a serious issue and taking action towards it. But as we all know, it takes time. So what are we going to do in the meantime?
Yeah. Great question. Let's roll with that. So what are we doing? How are we able, like you said, I love that point of the older, the original generations who first had social media in our hand, but we still don't know how to deal with that. And it might not be as much quote unquote cyberbullying, but it's almost like our most vulnerable insecurities and fears are getting played out, even just accidentally, right? With all of these filters and everyone looks perfect and I want this and everyone's house is always clean. And so everyone's always feeling less than. And that's kind of like, it's not like the person is meaning to do that when they post it, but we're even struggling with these addictions. But then the younger generation coming up, and they've only known this. They've only had online access and social media. Right. So what does that look like as far as protecting these impressionable young minds?
So I'm going to go back to one of my key messages that I preach throughout everything that I do, and that is communication. Mm-hmm. So if we don't tell our children, hey, when you see a photo online or a friend posting a video, that's not necessarily exactly how they look, or that's not necessarily a real background, or that's not necessarily the way they feel deep down inside. So coaching our kids through this, and even from a young age, even if it just starts young, but it's somewhat harmless, because even kids now, from even my kids, 7 and 9, they're watching things on YouTube. And sometimes I feel the need to say, keep in mind, that's not a real family in the sense that that's everything that they go through as a family, right? This is their facade online. This is their channel. This is things that they do or promote. So letting your kids know that's not ultimate reality. Right. And also communicating the fact, and I think this is great for empathy teaching as well, whatever your friend says, that doesn't necessarily mean that's everything that they're feeling inside. Right. They might be going through something else. Sometimes people put on this strong front, but that doesn't mean they're not going through other things too. So being sensitive to people's emotions and people's realities, I think, is important. So teaching them just from this young age what actually goes on online, so that whenever you feel comfortable as a parent or they're ready as a kid to have their own social media account, they're already aware of all of that, right? I think that's one value we can distribute as parents, because we've already seen this, we know what it is. We're more aware now. We're starting to manage our own time on these things, or our own activities. Yeah. So now if we pass that knowledge on to our kids, they'll be instantly better equipped than we were initially.
Yeah, I love that. I was reading an article about Gen Z, how they're getting to the point where they're like leaving their phones at home. This is like a new trend, and they're like going places without it. And I'm thinking to myself, well, that's back in the 80s. We had to go home and listen to the answering machine, right? Like this is a new trend. They're trying to make this like viral thing where you actually get some downtime off of it. And I think there's so much benefit to the mental health capacity there when you have a break from that. So I think that's really beautiful. If a child is being bullied, teen, what are some signs and symptoms that parents can be looking for? I mean, if there's not open communication, maybe it's gone too far, the child is kind of spiraling downward and they're not being open to talking about it. What are things parents should be looking out for?
So there are a few things that I would say are fairly big telltale signs. So one of them, even just in terms of the device usage, And this one might even indicate if your child is bullying other people. That's another indication of what I'm about to say, but also if they're being bullied. And that is if you see them on their phone, sorry, and you come into the room and they instantly put the phone away. That could be something, what are they doing on there or seeing on there that could be harmful to them, or that they might be engaging in unfavorable, unpositive activities.
Right.
That's one sign. Another sign would be, and I know you mentioned in your question, let's say there isn't open communication, but if there is even some communication, but it progressively is going downwards, worse, closed doors. Let's say your kid used to be one that came in the house and chatted for a few minutes. Now they don't do that. They go straight up to their room. They close the door. They only come out for dinner. All of these kinds of behaviors of pulling away could indicate something. And I don't want to completely freak people out because it's not necessarily the case either. We all know, especially once we get into tweens and teens, they do pull away a little bit. We have to give them that space, which is difficult, but just keeping an eye on that and seeing if you can even ask, I always say, more specific questions about a child's day as opposed to how was your day? Because then it's easy, even as adults, right? Yeah, it was great. But if we ask more specific questions, I feel that can sometimes open the doors a little bit more, get them talking about that, but then they think of something else to tell you. So we can always try that as well. But yes, putting the phone away, hiding the phone when you come around, serious drop in socialization, even new friend groups, that could be an indication as well. So are they not hanging out with who they were before? Who are they spending time with now? Do you know this group? What are sort of those, have you met any of those kids? How do they behave? How do they act? Those could be indications of things going on as well. An unwillingness to participate in any extracurriculars that they were before. So becoming uninterested in things that they were once passionate about, that could indicate something more going on as well. And then finally, I guess, any indication, school, are the grades keeping up? Any messages from teachers? Sometimes teachers will reach out and just say, hey, is your child okay? I'm noticing some differences in class. All of these kinds of things. And then, of course, what are they doing on the weekends or when they have more spare time? Again, are they really closed off? Are they with you? Are they willing to do anything family oriented or related? Do they want to go out with their friends like they always had before? Or are they pulling away as well?
Yeah, those are great tips. And those I would say go across the board. You mentioned not just if you're being bullied, but also if you possibly are involved in engaging in the bullying process. But I would say any type of mental health decline in their wellness and their overall general happiness and health, that those would all be signs of that as well. So it doesn't necessarily mean it's specifically for bullying, but it could be a sign of something deeper like a mental illness or where they're really struggling. And withdrawing, isolation being a big one. Yeah, those are really helpful. I'm thinking too of what I've heard with like online safety and online just kind of feeling crappy about yourself. Online is kind of designed to make you feel crappy about yourself. We know that's how advertising works, right? If you don't feel bad about yourself for something, you're not going to buy that product, right? So how are we able to instill that self-esteem in our kids as they're younger so that the online world isn't showing them their quote ideals, even though it's completely fake?
Yeah, that's such a great question. I love that. So I think where some parents may not think of this all the time, it's in the little things and it starts super young. So for example, every night before your child goes to bed, you are amazing. I love you so much. Never forget how amazing you are. Good night.
Yes.
A little line like that, but they hear it over and over and over, and they don't think much of it because it's just whatever mom or dad says to them before bed. But it will play its role in their mind as they move through and get older, and it will always be there. So that's one. Number two, look for super little things that your child does that you even just approve of. It might not be the biggest deal in the world, but make it a bigger deal. Yeah. So your child opened the fridge door for you before you put something in. Thank you. That was so thoughtful. My hands were full. Thank you so much. Recognizing them for all these little behaviors. If you have children who are also siblings, one doing a favor for the other. That was so nice that you did that for your brother. I bet he'll do a favor for you because he'll remember this. Great job. Positive cycles. If they do any extracurriculars or school, this goes for school and extracurriculars. Anytime they excel, let's say they were getting C's and now they got a B, wow, I'm so proud of you. Keep it up. That's amazing. Let's put a smiley face on this one, and let's take a picture and put it up on the wall. Recognize them for these small little wins.
Yeah.
If they excel at their extracurricular, your son got a goal in soccer, or your daughter did a gymnastics flip that she's always been trying to get, and then she got it, whatever it may be, recognize them for it, give them a hug.
Yeah.
Give them that praise that they want deep down, instead of just, oh, wow, cool, moving on. Because you watch them try to do it a million times and you don't even think about how special it might be to them, right?
Right.
Sometimes we don't intentionally do that. We all live busy lives. But I think from a very young age, instilling that amazingness in your kids and making them know that they're amazing for exactly who they are and all their unique attributes. And sometimes even calling out those special qualities. Like, wow, you're so funny. Do you know how funny you really are? Such a good sense of humor. Or you're so sensitive, I love how emotional you are about certain things. It means you really care. Calling out those kinds of qualities that they have and loving them for that individuality.
Yeah, I love that. For those who are listening instead of watching, if you go back and watch, you probably just saw me have all kinds of great emotions as if you were saying it to me, which I didn't do anything to earn it. But like just to hear those kind of things, it does do something, for your self-esteem, and it kind of lights you up. And I caught myself being like, oh, thanks. And I'm like, wait, she's not talking to me. But my inner child was like, oh, Katie thinks you're really cool. That was neat. I love that. Those are really great tips. Katie, thank you so much for joining us. I want to give you a few minutes to talk about a couple of resources. And I know you have these in the back of your book, and we're going to have the links for your book and your workbook in the show notes. But if you could just let us know a couple of places. So this would be for either preteens, teens, or adults who might be struggling, but also families if they're not quite sure what to do, if they're starting to see some of those warning signs and they're looking for some more help. What are some ways that families and teens that might be being bullied or having mental health struggles, where can they go? Where can they get help that they need?
For sure. So on a more general sense, back to what I said kind of initially, if it is the child who's struggling, and that could be on either end of the equation, right? It could be mental health, it could be being bullied, or it could be engaging in bullying activities and realizing what's happening and that they need to talk about stuff.
Yeah.
I believe everyone has at least one person in their life that they can trust and just confide in. And I would suggest go to that person first. Even if that isn't a family member, it could be a distant family member, a friend, a guidance counselor, a teacher that you trust or have a special bond with.
Yeah.
Further to that, there are helplines, which I'll get into in 1 second. But, approaching your immediate and just starting that dialogue and just saying, I need help. Where can I go? Do you have any suggestions? What should I do next? And just opening those doors, opening that dialogue initially.
Yeah.
For parents, there could be therapists in the area that you might want to talk to that might specialize in some of these things, especially if they specialize in dealing with kids or tweens or teens, or even for adults or family sessions. I would ultimately suggest that, because open dialogue and talking and communication is such a great form of therapy and a great starting point to figure out what's really going on here and how can we best deal with it.
Yeah.
And then further to that, more formally, I wrote down a couple of the big ones in the United States. So National Parent Helpline is a great suicide prevention lifeline. And that could mean even just the slightest thought or something related to suicide. Doesn't even need to be on the whole end of the spectrum on the other side. And finally, mental health services. So any of those can help as well. And again, that starting point that could then take you to the right solution that might be best for you and your child and your family.
Perfect. Thank you so much. I'm going to have all those linked up with your book and all of the information down in the show notes below. And we know that Amanda Todd's story did end in tragedy and suicide for her life, but the amount of kids that have heard about this story, the laws that have been changed with cyberbullying, and the changes that are coming are saving lives. And I know that that is such important work. Is there anything that I didn't ask that I should have asked that you would like to share here before we close out?
I think I'll just go back to my core message and everything that my book has to do with, from the novel to the workbook. And that really is about talking openly and speaking up, because that is the first step in any problem any one of us is experiencing. If you really think about it and you drill it down, that's the first step. It doesn't mean it's the full solution, and it doesn't mean it's going to solve all your problems or issues. but it's the first step in what will then become the second, third, fourth, and more meaningful solutions that we can get to. We have to start somewhere. We have to use that power of communication that we all have as human beings on this earth. And if we start by talking and communicating in whatever way we feel most comfortable, we can get to the next step we need to get to make a positive change.
Yeah. And speaking up as a bystander, I mean, the subtitle of your book, correct me if I'm wrong, a victim, an abuser, and a bystander, and how all three of their lives changed, right? That's the subtitle. You really are talking about all three, the one who's going through it, the one who's doing the abusing, which, we know that abuse begats abuse. So the abuser has obviously been through things as well, but there's a bystander there, right? And there was other people that were watching, like Amanda Todd's story. They were watching, and there was people that knew, and it's like, speak up, say something, stand up for the person who might be being bullied. And that means even if they're in their own home, right? So when you hear about abuse that's going on and your friend discloses that with you, maybe you're listening and you're like, wow, someone told me, their dad is abusing them. You can speak up to your trusted adults and you can get some help involved, because you literally might be saving an actual life. I really thank you for your message. It is a beautiful core message. It's super important for us as humans to stand up and speak out for other humans, right? That's what makes us human, the community around us. And we wouldn't be here without the support of other people. You probably wouldn't either. It's super important to be a supportive human and just go that little extra step of kindness. So thank you for that message. I appreciate it. Katie, where can people find you, reach out to you? And I'll have your socials and all that linked up in the show notes.
Beautiful. Thank you. So you can find me on all the major social media outlets. Yep. I'm usually at Katie Kuperman Writes, or just at Katie Kuperman. Yep. And my website is katiekuperman.com. My last name is spelled kind of funny, Kuperman, Superman with a K, we say.
Oh, that's really cute. That's adorable. I love that.
And my books are both available on Amazon, all other major retail outlets online as well. So Thank you so much for having me on. I really appreciate being here.
Thank you. Take care. Thanks for sharing today. Have a great rest of your day.
Thank you. You too. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you for listening to or watching this episode of the Trauma Survivorhood podcast. Please subscribe, like, share, and follow. For any information that was discussed in this podcast episode, check out the show notes below. Until next time, be well.